You're going to have to make a daily declaration, an hourly declaration, and say, I'm going to continue to stand. And if it takes you, it takes you. That's what you have to do. You're made to do that. You're made to stand in the face of things that will scare every creature on this earth. You're made to stand in places a demon won't stand. And the angels, they won't stand either. But you have to commit yourself to it. See, for a man, it's more of making a choice. Father, it's your way or my death. That's how it is. That's your choice. Once you make that choice, your strength returns. Your strength is in your ability not to respond by the flesh, but to stand firm in the spirit. That takes all your strength. You don't have to exercise strength to fight back with flesh. I call that the coward's way out. To fight with your flesh is the coward's way out. Because it's much harder not to be overcome with anger, isn't it? Come on, men, you know what I'm talking about. It is much harder not to be overcome with anger. It is much harder not to say a word. Come on, tell me, somebody out there just say, oh yeah, that's it. I can't be alone in these things, right? That's your job, all right? Once we overcome these things, we're no longer prone to parts of the delusion. Let me ask you guys a question. Some of you folks have seen UFOs, right? You've heard about them. Listen, here it goes. You ready? Because I'm going to connect this all the way back to Mars. Not in the way you think either. Anyway, how would a craft make a 90-degree turn and the occupants still live? That's impossible. Do you guys know what kind of forces that would be on there moving at 3,000 miles an hour, make a 90-degree turn, and nobody is smashed to one side? That's a lot of force that just changed directions. And we all know that inertia works, right? You know that law of inertia? Anything in motion tends to stay in motion in that given direction upon that side, right? Do you think mankind has overcome that? How many of you think that mankind has overcome the problem of inertia? Because if they overcame that, you still have to overcome the G's. You know, when a person's face is smashed back, when they're being tested for health reason, right? In a G chair, they pass out. Their face is all squashed back. They look horrible. How do you overcome that? Well, now, somebody says fallen angel tech. Well, let me give you this. Now, I know this is going to, some of you out there, you're experts in your field. This may fly in the face of some things that you know, right? By the way, I'm a controversial speaker, right? I don't speak for popularity. I don't speak for my edification either. I want you to consider something. Does anybody know the relationship? There's a known well, we're just going to talk about mass, right? That's number one. We're going to talk about gravity, right? And we're going to talk about electromagnetism. I'm going to give you a crash course and some of the properties just so you know how it works. Okay. First, electromagnetism, right? Magnetic fields can be generated through the flow of current and some other things. But when you produce a magnetic field, it is polarized, which means one side is basically positive, one side negative, right? If you have two magnets, they can repel or attract to one another, right? Correct? Now, in a way, all things like if we look at an atom is balanced. You know why? The protons inside are negated by the electrons on the outside. Anybody ever do chemical balancing and all those things, right? So you have to make sure certain things match and add up and formulas are run, this, that, and the other, right? So anyway, that electromagnetism within an atom is negated by its protons and by its electrons, right? but it still has electromagnetic field around it. There's current flowing through every single atom. It's being generated. Self-sustaining, actually. Right? We're looking for perpetual energy, and all we had to do was look at an atom anyway. Anyway, that's a key to the LHC, by the way, one of the keys. It's got many purposes. That's one of the keys. While everybody's looking for these everlasting energy sources, one has already been committed that you can hold in your hand. But we're not getting to that yet. So then, electromagnetism or magnets or magnetic field can repel or attract other magnetic fields, but it can also do something else. Anybody know what it is? If any proton or if any electron, depending on what portion of the magnetic field it is, the magnetic field can act as a highway that protons or electrons travel on. Do you guys know that? Just like our universe. Everything moves and is following the magnetic force lines of our galaxy. They can see them now because now they have optics that can see the magnetic fields. It's quite beautiful. It's not what you expect, but it's quite beautiful. So everything is following that stuff, right? But why? Now we're talking about defeating inertia, which is actually to defeat gravity, right? So that's electromagnetism. I'm not going deeper than that. That's Now let's talk about gravity. What in the world is gravity? Gravity and electromagnetism are quite different. The magnetic field, right? Very different than gravity. So what is gravity? Gravity has to do with mass. And it works like this. You have one atom, right? You have one atom. Not a lot of gravity, right? One atom, not a lot of gravity. Get about 5 or 6, 7, 8, factor that times a billion. You got a massive object, right? You have mass. Well, in the mass, or in a heavy object, what has happened? You have a bunch of atoms clunked together. Why did they stick together? They attract one another. Stay with me. They attract one another. But it's also cumulative. Right? So the more atoms you add to the clump, it's going to begin to attract more atoms to the clump. That's called gravity. Gravity is cumulative. For each atom, there's an increase in gravity. For each one. Atoms make up the matter that we are used to and we see. Right? So then, you are full of atoms. Funny how they called it Adam from that guy from Babylon. That's funny. I know, I read the stories about the other guy, but I'm talking about the guy from Babylon who apparently wrote this from his mind's eye, but he said he was inspired by one of the deities who was right on target anyway. So then these atoms, once they start clumping together, attract more atoms, which is called gravity. Right? That's why you can get to an edge of a building. Anybody ever been close to the edge of something, but you didn't know you were close to the edge, but you could feel something tugging at you? Have you ever felt that? Anybody ever feel that before? I've done that to people quite a few times. You can walk somebody to the edge of something, and they won't notice the edge, right? And they feel like something is pulling them backward, but they're blindfolded. They have no idea they're standing on a cliff, but it feels like they're being pulled. And why is that? I'll tell you why. Because when you're standing on a cliff, you're at the edge of the clump, but there's a larger clump below, which is attracting loose particles from above. So you can blindfold anybody, bring them backward close to an edge or forward close to an edge, and they're going to feel like they're being drawn to one area. It happens every single time. So it's not of the mind. It truly is a matter. That's a case where matter acts over the mind. Right? So they're being drawn to the larger clump is what's happening. Right? Because they're at the edge of the clump. So they're being drawn by gravitational forces is what that's called. That's gravity. So how do you overcome inertia? Well, what inertia is, listen, because when you get a bunch of atoms clumped together, what's that called? Mass. It's called mass. A bunch of atoms clumped together, it's called mass. Mass attracts things. The greater the mass, the greater the gravity. Correct? Correct? Your body is mass. What does that have to do with electromagnetism? I'm glad you asked that. Here's something you may not know. You guys ready? Even the experts in here, listen to me, you may not know this. When you have two magnets with the same poles pointed to each other, let's just say they're industrial magnets, can you make those two magnets touch one another? Can you? You can't do it, can you? You can't do it, can you? Why? Why can't you do it? Because there's a property about magnetic fields that nobody really investigates. They warp the minds of people from your childhood that you never think of it. Here it is. Opposing forces of a magnetic field creates an enormous amount of mass. Did you know that? It creates mass. The Germans had an experiment where they were fooling around with superconductors, electromagnetic fields, and they were doing calculations of mass and running experiments of mass. And they found out that the opposing field lines, two magnets in between there, but it was generating massive, unbelievable weight out of nothing. Is what they found out. They were using superconductors because superconductors can repel anything. It can slide through anything. It can also utilize magnetic field lines based on that temperature, right? Right. But the mass in between them is enormous. We're talking super massive. Just by you forcing two magnets together, you're creating mass that you wouldn't believe. And they found out with that mass, gravity increases in a design around that. Right? That's how they found something out. Because that gravity increases like that, through magnetism you can alter gravity. If you alter gravity, and you can also alter mass through electromagnetic fields, inertia no longer counts. Because you can stabilize the mass. In effect, put yourself in a bubble that is immune to mass building on one side or the other. That's why they can suspend life forms and even you in certain magnetic vaults they have. And it does not matter how many G's you're rotating, you will not feel the G's. All forces are negated. All forces. So is it impossible for a craft to make a 90-degree turn? No, it's not. And when did they find this out? In I believe it was 1952. I believe it was 1952. I'm sorry, 1942. I'm sorry, 1942 is when they actually, this experiment surfaced. It was duplicated and then it vanished. It was in Germany and it came here. Right? Kind of like the honeyboo, which is real. That's real. I mean, if you do your homework, you'll see it anyway. Anyway, so these guys, here's what they did. With all those Wunderweapons in Germany, they continued that research. They never stopped. They showed you the stupid things, like tinfoil moonlanders. Well, they did the real work. They didn't tell you about the Saturn V rocket, of which they brag, it's the most stable rocket platform in the world. Man, that thing was plagued with problems. Even now it's plagued with problems. If it were so stable, why do we need Russia? There's something weird going on, wouldn't you say? Part of that delusion. Why do our astronauts go to Russia? And we've never really liked each other, right? China, Russia, they're all good friends in space. They spend billions of dollars. And they're all buddies working on the same projects. Germany and Russia have a good working relationship concerning space, but they're supposed to be enemies. Something strange is happening, don't you believe? So we have a political situation that does not touch the money for science. What kind of science? What are these guys doing? Oh, that's part of their delusion also. Because we believe everything they do, hook, line, and sinker, until somebody nosy comes up, like BP Earthwatch. He's nosy and starts poking around in different things. And he says, wait a minute, this doesn't match up. And you have other people out there, they start doing the same thing. They say, hey, this doesn't add up. Something is not right here. This is not adding up. Then you have the other folks like Anthony Patch said, wait a minute, this money thing is not working out here. Yeah, people say, wait a minute, they ran this experiment a long time ago. Why are they doing it again? Why are they doing it underground? Why would they even say it's underground when all of them have been underground? That's the dumbest. You know, the dumbest thing, I have to laugh about some of this stuff. Because I remember when everybody was fixated on the fact that it was deep underground. Well, aren't they all? I was cracking up laughing. I was like, now these guys are running out of cover stories. They really are. But they'll stick Shiva in front of everybody's faces. And then they emphasize the fact how deep underground it is. And then the nosy people say, wait a minute, that those magnets are too powerful. I mean, it takes a lot of magnetic force, but good grief, that's powerful. Then you had the plane that went down in that vicinity because the protons were loosed. That just went away, didn't it? Did you ever find a cause for that plane that went down and CERN was not too far away during a time when they were experimenting? And it just so happens that after that, the magnets were kind of iffy, right? Because they couldn't publish that. Lord forbid that. Because then the protons would not follow the beam. See, if the magnets don't work, that beam is erratic. It could break. It could go anywhere. And the last thing you want is a bunch of protons going through material. Because what's going to stop them? The magnets are there to direct them. Without the magnets, they're not going to follow the field lines. I'm trying to tell you something about magnets. It's very difficult to change the path of a proton, but magnets have enough force to do it. Trying to tell you something about, it's right there in front of our faces. You've got to lock onto it so you can dispel certain things, because these guys have been crafty, but now there's a breakaway. There's a breakaway. And I can tell you this, there are people who want to tell something, but it's going to cause some stuff to happen. I like electromagnetism, though, especially when you get into devices that operate by magnetic memory, right? Magnetic memory. Because basically, the print in your body, there's an electronic signature, an electric signature of fields of force in your entire body. Those fields of force can be memorized by special computers they've set up. It's called magnetic memory. Your brain, and because matter can be produced, unseen matter can be produced by electromagnetic fields. Those who control those electromagnetic fields can also manipulate matter. That's why they have materials now that bullets can pass through, but it does not leave a scar in the material. And we're talking about metal. Now, who's ever seen metal you can shoot through? And it heals itself after the bullet passes through. I had to laugh about that one too, because that's not new. They were talking about that on the Abrams tank back in 1988. So you have to laugh at these things, right? It's kind of like the SR-71 Blackbird's pretty old technology, isn't it? So is the stealth bomber, so are all these other things, but they're still using it today. Do you really honestly think that the Apache is some new technology for a helicopter? It is not. It's old. Do you really think a computer, even the Dell computers with the sophisticated architecture, you should see the platters in those things. Do you really think that's like up-to-date technology? They've gone past. They don't use silicon like they used to. They've gone to something else. So science has broken away in one portion. But if you understand some things in prophecy, you'll see what's coming back. To know what's coming in prophecy is to figure out what exists right now. Telling you the truth. So why not get people to deny prophecy? See, if you deny prophecy, and you begin to know the season, then you can find out what they're doing right now. To know tomorrow is to see what people are doing right now. Isn't that funny? Have you ever thought of it that way? If you know the end of a story, then you can be instructed on what's happening right now. If you know the beast system, and the beast is going to be revealed, then you know the system is already in operation. If you know that God will send them a strong delusion that they will believe a lie, that they all might be damned who love not the truth, then what truth is he speaking of? It is the truth of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. So then, since he has ascended, gone to the right hand of the Father, ever since that time, people have been given over to a strong delusion. To give them over to a delusion means that delusion exists. Thus the Lord said, come out of her, my people. Thus the Lord said, come out of the world. Didn't he say that? So the delusion, and that's why I don't like things of the world. When you mix truth with lies and then publish it and everybody begins to believe it, you hide the truth in a lie, but then you hide lies in the truth. And you can't decipher the two. You can't discern the two. And it becomes what? Noise. There's lots of truth in entertainment, but you don't know how it's truth. Because our minds have been restructured, reprogrammed to believe what's placed in front of us. And so all of us have become skeptic, and we say this: if I don't see it, I can't believe it. Or, if I don't comprehend it, it means nothing to me. Well, that's a fallacy. The Father told us what we need to know. And we have a difficult time believing in the Father because we can't see how that's going to work. But see, we limit ourselves in true knowledge by saying, well, I don't see how that can work. Well, you're not here to figure everything out. We're not. You see? So now we get to the atmosphere and these global changes. They already knew these changes would take effect, and this goes back to Mars. Anybody know where that word Mars came from? This is going to be fun. You guys know where that word came from? I've heard you guys say this word all the time. I've heard you say it all the time. It's used in the Bible. They used to worship. It starts with a B. They used to worship it. It's a weird spelling of a name that's very simple. Baal. 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 Do you think that's funny? Baal was Mars. Do you know that? The god of war. Baal. B-A-A-L. Baal. Somebody just said, wait a minute. That's the stupidest thing I ever heard. No, that's the truth. Hey, wait a minute. Those of you who read the Sumerian text in truth, who was on Mars? Tell me, who was on Mars? Who was there? Did you say the Agigi? That's right, they were there. The Agigi. They were there on Mars. Why would they worship Mars? Well, you have to read the stories. Because Mars was larger than the moon. Oops, did I say that? Leak that one out. Larger than the moon, yes. Every so often, let me tell you our truth here. Every so often, there's a disturbance in the heavens. Mars comes in close proximity to the earth. Now, let me tell you why this is important. Don't you accept this as truth. I'm going to tell you something. Though it is truth to me, don't you accept it as truth. Let me tell you something. If you knew the true function of our solar system, you'd be scared to death every single day, because now you're able to see what caused a lot of destruction. It's easier to believe something is coming from way out there than it is to look upon something every day and to have people watching it like a hawk. There were some recordings. There was a disturbance in the heavens, and every time this happens, certain orbits are elongated, and the Earth and Mars will do a dance, it says. The Indians say, the Native Americans, certainly the Hopi people, will say that Mars and the moon will dance in the plaza. You ever heard that before? You guys say Kachina, but you can see them right now. There were other ancient recordings, certainly in Babylon, because those dummies etched it, and so did the Egyptians. Mars is a little more than what you thought it was. That's why it's such an interesting place. It is imperative for them to know the exact nature of Mars in every way that they can, because a disturbance is coming yet again. That disturbance, now I'm going to have to be just say it could be from a twin star or a third star. It's not uncommon to see a system with 2 or 3 or 4 suns or 5 even. It's not uncommon. It's very uncommon to see a system with just one star. It's very uncommon. Right? Very uncommon. Most systems are binary plus, which means they have more than one sun. They've seen other systems where one sun is active. The other sun is dormant, and it orbits the one sun, kept in an essential balance. So it's like a gas giant just going around the one star. It didn't ignite yet, and they were trying to find out what put it out, or was it ever lit? Because imagine how the sun, if you think in those terms, what lit the sun on fire? Gas had to be present, correct? I mean, if you think in a certain context, and you're looking at all the planets, right? Something ignited the sun. What did that? What ignited the sun? Nobody ever thinks, and I'm just a weirdo when I think in terms like that, right? Right? Wrong. Because you have a lot of things out there that defy explanation. Planet forming is thrown out of the window. Celestial mechanics stomped on because they now have the optics to observe things that they never thought possible. They didn't. Also, Mercury is a killer. Mercury is another mechanism in our solar system that will aid Mars in passing strong electromagnetic and electric forces on the surface of this planet. Every time Mars is dislodged and its orbit is elongated, guess what happens? Climate catastrophes on this planet. How many of you know the distance between Earth and Mars? How many of you know that the elongation process of Mars is beginning, so they had to adjust their dates for all communications with Mars? How many of you know that the changes are so drastic, this is why everybody had to go to digital communications? Because now they really need to fine-tune with the greatest of accuracy some things on the VH level, and your communications were getting in the way. It's all changing now. But again, if you could see it in the solar system and identify, but you knew that one day it was coming to destroy you, you would go crazy. Again, it's better to know something from out there may come one day, right? Than to see your destruction in the skies every year. Just like the moon. Better for you to look at the moon and just think it's a dead rock than to ever find out a different nature about the moon. Right? A delusion is that somehow God has made something purposeless. The greater delusion is evolution. The reason why they push evolution is because what is coming. Did you notice the scripture in Revelation that says they will behold the beast that was, is not, yet shall be? And they will wonder whose names were not in the book of life from the foundation of the world. They're going to wonder, are we from that thing? We're not even human, right? We're not human. But how do you do that? Because if the beast came right now today, even the atheists would say, no, we're not following you. We're not going to follow you. Isn't that something? You're not going to follow the beast right now. If you saw something supernatural drop from the sky, you're not going to follow it. You're not. You're going to know then that's a false something. In fact, many people will side with the Christians. Oh, that's false. Because you know about what you call Project Bluebeam from a leaked document. Right? Quote unquote leaked, supposedly. Since you know about Project Bluebeam, if Christ himself came and a country said, hey, we just saw Christ, you wouldn't believe that either. You say, no, when he comes, everybody can see him. You wouldn't fall for the stuff. But I tell you this, if this world was in distress and it really looked hopeless for humanity, you would accept any hand that reaches out for you. You're going to see the activity of the beast. You're seeing the activity of the beast now. Let me prove my case in point so you can wake up. The Bible says, when you see the abomination of desolation spoken of by the prophet Daniel sitting where it ought not, then those in Judea fleeing to the mountains. Of course, we can take this as that unholy alliance surrounding Israel. And the desolation of Israel is nigh. Luke 21, right? When you see Jerusalem camped about by your enemies, you know that the desolation thereof is nigh. Well, when the desolation thereof is nigh, guess what? The abomination of desolation is set up. At first, now there are two episodes. Number one, it says the abomination that makes it desolate. I love the way the word hides things from people. The abomination that makes it desolate, so the desolation comes first. Then those who come into Israel, because 3.5 years is a long time, they are going to build something. We see this in the book of Daniel and the book of Revelation too. And what they build, they're going to cause people to worship it. They're going to put that thing in a sacred place. My goodness, I love the word of God. But the world will know nothing, as Jesus said, until the flood comes and takes them all away. So shall it also be in the coming of the Son of Man. The one who sees or who gets the message, as in the days of Sodom and Gomorrah. We have to take the instructions and never look back. The occupants of Sodom did not know they were going to be destroyed. God's people knew they were going to be destroyed. Those in Sodom had a party the same time Lot and his family walked away. They didn't know anything until they were on fire. Did they? See, if something were so obvious about the end times, even the world would question it. Are you guys seeing where I'm coming from? So here's the phase. You have the natural happenings as they are now. Slowly everything's going into position. Jerusalem is camped about by her enemies right now. The unholy alliance is already forming. They're camped about. The desolation is near. So something will happen by way of policy. These guys come in and seize Jerusalem under some Mideast Force Act. And then they talk the table again. While they're doing so, they're going to begin to do all sorts of crimes like they do today. People in America be sitting home saying, oh, we're going to help you. They're going to cling to them with many flatteries. Right? And just as it's written, some of those who do know their God will be strong to exploits, but they will even die over there. So we'll see it just like we see today. Right? And we'll have compassion upon that. But the ministers over here who truly believe in the Lord will weep between the porch and the altar. They'll say, no, that's wrong, but nobody's going to listen to them. Right? You all know that Pastor Paul and Paul Bagley prophecy stands up for Israel. So do many other ministers. When they see the desolation of Israel, they're going to weep between the porch and the altar. Won't they? Then all the Christians will begin to see it as it hits close to home right before the great distress starts. Because that won't be distress. Not for us. They'll point it out and begin to witness against those who came against Jerusalem. The two olive trees that stand before the God of the earth. Trees grafted into the branch. Olive trees. Those things that belong to God. You're grafted into the branch. They will begin to witness to all those who came against Jerusalem. Releasing the words of the Father Because see, when that happens, no one will trust their own words. They're going back to Scripture. They will begin to utter those things in Scripture, speaking toward Jerusalem, the entire house of God, and whoever's in the house will begin to witness against those who came against Jerusalem, to tell them their fate. They will speak with one voice and declare things you never had declared before. And when so many get together and declare a thing, the Father will respond, that thing will happen. And then they will be defeated, and that's why the Word of God says He will wear out the saints of the Most High. He was given power to overcome the saints. I'm talking too much, right? So anyway, this happens, and then the distress comes. Because you see, after that 3.5 years, now the beast has to fight all those who come. All things that are happening. Remember, the people of the kingdom of the beast will begin to suffer. Those things that come out of the bottomless pit will begin to cause man to suffer. Those who don't belong to the Messiah or the Father at that time will be hurt. Anybody sealed with the seal of God on their foreheads is not to be touched. They're not going after those who are under the hand of the Father, but they're going after those who are not under the hand of the Father. Now, I know I differ in certain points with everybody, but listen. The key, the angel with the key to the bottomless pit, I'm just saying this because he opens the bottomless pit. A prisoner never lets himself out, because that same angel binds Lucifer in the bottomless pit. That is the angel with the key to the bottomless pit. Apollyon is in the earth. But the fallen angels are in the earth still working. They've been working for a long time. We know them as influence. We know them as voices. We know them as inspiration. They take many different forms, including funny lights in the sky. Of course, most of the things that you have seen are ours, but some are ancient. They showed up in many different forms. But so did Gabriel and Michael. Let me tell you why. As soon as when the book of Daniel was written, it was at the same time a great battle was taking place in Persia. Right? And guess what the men saw? They saw one flying shield, and they began to turn everything towards that one flying shield, which then began to defeat them. After the course of days, when it kept coming back, another shield appeared, and it ended the whole thing. That was the end of that. You remember in the Bible where it says, Gabriel was withstood 21 days. And he had to go get Michael as prince to help him get through. You guys remember that? Why is it consequential that a shield was saw? Now, they saw a shield for 20-some days, and then they saw another shield, and it was over. They were terrified. The one shield was fighting hundreds of thousands of people, doing things, helping out the other army and things of that nature. All of a sudden, they see a second, and that just did it. They couldn't maintain themselves against one. We're talking about a nation was fighting. We're not talking about a few thousand men. We're talking about an entire nation. They were breeding like rabbits, and they were fighting in Persia. But there's a principality in Persia that's still there today. That's why Iran is still existing. They should have fallen a long time ago. Why did they not fall? They should have been like Iraq. They should have been as Sodom. They should have been as Gomorrah. But that's not the case. Persia is far worse than Babylon ever was. They call something out there the sand beast. They know of it well. They hear it, it speaks, and they know it's rising. You see, there's a pit in the Middle East. You can't get near it, and that pit resides. That's in Turkey. That's one opening. Nobody goes near this pit. Green, smoky stuff comes out of that pit and make you sick getting near it. Somewhat like if you encountered a demonic spirit and you're not strong, you'll become sick, bad smells and everything else. So it's quarantined, but it's also sacred. And yes, they throw sacrifices into that pit. That's something you don't know. You don't know that, do you? Children do go in that pit. Lord help this word out, but they do it all the time. There was a point back a long time ago, they used to send school buses down into those places. They knew the school buses of children would never come back. They knew it. They knew it would never come back. See, when you start knowing things like this, I mean for a fact, because if you carefully do your research, you'll go find it. And you'll say, oh my Lord, what are they doing? But see, that would just mess up your whole day, because somehow you think in the world, though things are bad, it's all hunky-dory, and it's not. And when you start finding out the truth, it'll make you sick to your stomach. But then you find out who's behind it, and I'm telling you, you'll stand against them in everything that they say. But if you knew the truth about everybody, you would go insane. You really would. Because you would say most of what we hold sacred and believe in is being held up by murderers and thieves. That's what you would say. That's exactly what you would say. Society at that point will begin to break down. Because if you're a Christian, and if you prove something so common but so deadly, then all the Christians would begin to know of it. They wouldn't dispute it. Society would change. Because then you would stand up. Because you'd have proof. See, right now you are to stand up by faith. But the proof will be here. But then in that time of the proof, the saints of the living God are going to be wore out. That is the indignation against Jerusalem and also against us. There will be a day that we have to fight in truth. Then the introduction of the Savior's come. You see, in the beast kingdom, he convinced the world to worship a God his fathers knew not, a strange God, the God of forces, Baal. Why do you think they're so interested in putting monuments of Baal all over the world? Baal is Mars. Oh my goodness. Mars is also known as the God of war, but by another name. Do you know what that is? The father of forces. Mars is known as the father of forces. They named it that because Mars has come close to Earth twice. And guess what it did? It did just reface the Earth. That's what happened. There was a disturbance in the heavens. They saw Mars the size of the moon. And it disrupted the forces as men could perceive all over the planet. No wonder the beast will be able to call down fire from heaven in sight of all men. He knows his time. Satan was cast to the earth. Oh, he was angry because he knew he had but a short time. Right? Isn't that something? What is that BPS about a Baal's jail, isn't it? That's where he was cast, in a Baal's jail. Ascribe all sin to Azazel. Dodo. I will alone do this deed. I'll take the blame for everything, guys. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. That's what one of them said. And then Azazel, with his wise self, began to teach everything. And to him was ascribed all sin. Right? Mars, Baal, God of forces, God of war, because it's Mars. It will be dislodged again, which is why there's a prophecy that says it will appear that Earth has been thrown out of its orbit. The Earth will rock to and fro like a drunkard. How can you perceive the Earth rocking to and fro? The stars will be out of their places until the point they will not give their light. It will feel like the Earth has been cast into outer darkness. Things blocking the view of the sun, thus you only see a portion of the sun, and a portion of night, and a portion of the moon. Something is obstructing the heavens because it's so close to Earth. What could do that? Something is going to come close to the Earth and unleash a magnitude of forces again. Why were they so interested in putting seismometers on the moon, putting seismometers on Mars? Why were they so interested in measuring the distance between Earth and Mars? Why? Why are they spending so much money to do that? I mean, they monitor it closely. They need an exact orbit of Mars. They need that calculated, fine-tuned, and everything else. But here we buy the big lie. We do. We buy it. Listen to me close. How many things have they sent up to Mars? When was the last time you heard that upon launching it was destroyed? It must have got hit by a micrometeorite. There's stuff flying around out there, right? So you've heard. But they send something all the way out to Pluto, and it's not blown up yet? Or is that a joke? That's a sick joke, right? There's nothing. That means, listen, with all the close calls we have, how in the world can they sit there and duck and dodge rocks, micrometeorites, and everything else? Did you ever think of that? Something is not making sense. Something is not making sense. I remember the moon landings, and, you're sitting there, you say, wait a minute, there's no starlight. And then people come up with these wild theories. Well, it's because, the heavens are a hologram. Of course, they do have technology. Kind of like a big screen TV. They can hide anything they want to in the atmosphere. They can actually do that. Now, that's the real Project Bluebeam. They mix everything up. You think Project Bluebeam is to show something fake to the people because of a leaked document, right? And the budget paper. But the true purpose is to obscure what's already in the heavens, to control what you see in the heavens, so you don't see what's really up there. Because when you go out there, it's not what you think it is. Why do you think they're so interested in teaching and governing what people can really see out there, right? You don't have full access to what's up there because you would see too much. You'd say, oh my Lord, is there anything dead up there? See, that would change everything. Then you go right back to the spiritual realm. And you say, my Lord, forgive me, I did not believe. That's what you'd say. Forgive me, I didn't believe. I was a fool. I was believing a lie. Teach me the truth because I don't know the truth. We'd all confess that. Teach me the truth, Lord, because I don't know it. You ever seen an astronaut get upset and angry and frightened and scared? Only till recently, these guys told truths and nobody believed them. One of them is an ex-Mason. Nobody believes him, right? So two things have happened here, because you can look at the moon right now and you can see remnants of things up on the moon. What you saw on TV, I don't know, but somebody was up there. Anyway, it was also recorded in history. Something very special with the moon and Mars. Do you guys remember back in was it the 60s? When that storm was all over Mars? Do you guys remember that? The storm that encompassed the whole planet of Mars. Do you guys remember that? What year was that? What year was that? Is it the 60s? What year was that? Somebody help me out here. I mean a storm that encompassed the entire planet of Mars. Right? Now, we all know that was not, natural. Something weird was going on there, right? How about just recently? That little halo, the halo pieces in the cloud formations look like some flat cumulonimbus clouds going around there. What about the recent moisture release of the ice melting off of the caps of Mars? Mars is altering and changing. It really is. They send those probes down there. They're so, this is funny. I ask you this. Why isn't the camera on some of the rovers full of dust? Do you know if it's anything like the moon, the moon's cameras and stuff was destroyed by that stuff, right? I was all over the place. So my question is, who's wiping off the camera lenses? Because one day they showed shots from the rover that looked like it had been sandblasted, right? The next day it was squeaky clean. Did somebody go up there with Windex or something? I mean, what's going on? Because they didn't put windshield wipe. If you look on the schematics of the rover, you should ask the same, wait a minute, how do you clean the cameras? You didn't put that into the design. So how are you cleaning? What's keeping the cameras clean? There's no blower up there. There's no protection on that. It should not work like that. It should be full of dust. And in fact, a lot of those parts should be full of dust. But every time they show you a picture of Mars, you think they're showing you a big landscape. And I can assure you, what they're showing you is about the size of your bedroom. Oh, Lord forbid they show you geometric shapes. But don't worry, you're going to be able to see it up close and personal. You'll see the true nature of spiritual damage. That's an assurance we won't be guessing. We have to live in that time. And it's not fascinating. It's deadly. Large bolts of plasma jumping from one planet to the other. Have you ever seen that? I haven't. I've seen it one time with ISON. I saw it that time with ISON. I saw a recording of that from a few different vantage points. I saw it with ISON. But I've not observed that in real life. Have you? I haven't. I haven't done that. So I'm telling you, this delusion is warping our minds. The truth is in prophecy. But if our mind is warped enough, we're going to change prophecy itself, make it fit our paradigm. We'll begin to doubt it and everything else because we don't understand it, and it's all right there. I love the Word of God. I really do. And you know what? We're going to go deeper into these conversations because, listen, have you seen tomorrow's title? Have you seen it? Oh, the radiation belts. Now, you can't track the radiation belts, right? You can't do that. Let me tell you what happened a long time ago in certain operations that they had. Now, I told you about a couple operations that they did have, right? And that was Argos was one of them. Here's what that was. They would shoot these nuclear, well, let's just say they would high altitude explosions, right? High altitude explosions. Because they wanted to see if they could release heat from the planet. This is so funny. You know what they did? They created a radiation belt around the Earth. Then the dodos did it in 1962. Guess what they did? This test created a bunch of beta particles in the Earth's magnetic field. Well, you know what that does? It increases radiation around the Earth. They did it again. Oh, but that's not the end of it. Then they tried to correct it. I know you've heard about chemtrails and HAARP and all this, that, and the other. But these dodos have damaged more things than they have fixed. But they have already tampered with the magnetosphere. I'm telling you now, it's real. Look up, just do some inspection of starfish. I'm not sure the years. Give it 1960 through 1963. Look it up. Do some researching, you'll find it. These dodos have been messing up quite a bit, right? So then, with all that radiation, now they're running around talking about, oh, it's global warming. Well, of course it's going to warm up when you're adding radiation belts around the Earth. What do you expect? And when you know it, it's been warming up ever since these operations. How convenient. You guys remember in the articles in the this is probably before your time, but if you're nosy enough, you'll remember back in 1952, the topic of global warming happened. That's when it began. 2004, it took off with the impact of a magnetar. That's when the UN began to sanction things concerning it. See, when that magnetar did happen, it took a chunk of our atmosphere, and taking that chunk of the atmosphere, it destroyed quite a bit. But by radiation, that was never in the blast itself. It was by the radiation we had up there. So it dipped is what happened, and there were casualties on flights. People were irradiated to the point of having bad cancer within a week. They have radiation sickness. And they were just traveling from one part of the Earth to the other, but the radiation belt dipped. The same radiation belt we stuck up there with our high-altitude nuclear explosions. That's a shame, isn't it? Now, because we can't track the Van Allen belts, the truth is, one of them is not a radiation belt. Who proposed it? Van Allen. How did he do that? That's what you need to find out. Because they made up a bunch of... It's so funny. Now, all of us grew up probably believing the Van Allen belts are there, right? This is so funny. But we accepted the word of somebody else. Now we're finding out in our lifetime, well, some people didn't tell the truth. about quite a few things. And we're starting to question, hey, did they tell us the truth or not? And we're finding out they didn't. You have some hardliners out there. They look at everything skeptical, and guess what? When you're in science, I thank God for them. Because that keeps many people from falling into traps they don't need to fall into, or believing a falsehood and then build upon that falsehood. Right? But it also allows you to, because when they capture something, when they actually see it or catch it through numerical data, all those people, or all the things they said were true, they're going to openly, because now they have an audience, they're going to say, nope, that's not true. They have fooled us all on this. When that truth begins to ring out, right? Well, that's going to be a test, because when you no longer trust the government, now I know people say they don't trust them, but we do. When you can no longer trust the government, people take matters into their own hands. The problem is, we don't have anything out there, you and I, to see anything, do we? We didn't launch a probe. That's almost like the space shuttle flights. Did you notice that before the space shuttle flights ended, 3 years before that, companies were bidding on the contracts for space? How convenient. A bid war took place right before the explosion of one of the shuttles. Why would they do this? Why? Because these guys are ruthless, and they want you to believe space is complicated. A lot of astronauts say that's not the truth. All that hardware and stuff that we stuck up there is nothing compared to what's already up there. Now, this came out of their mouths. But they won't listen to them now. They think they're nuts. Well-known astronauts, people think they're lunatics. Those people who produced the photographs and took pictures of things, they think they're nuts. And then you have these people with you have these folks with these falsehoods. Here's how they get you to believe in something. There are people who have come out with falsehoods working for certain agencies who openly told people, oh, my phones are tapped and they're after me and I've got threats on my life, so that you believe what they're bringing forward. But what you're not believing in the truth. Right? So the facts, you have to gather, you have to crunch and gather a lot of data. And then you have to be able to interpret that data yourself. You can no longer rely upon anybody else. The only thing you can rely upon the government of is when they tell you how much bread costs. You can rely upon that. But how many of you are experts in the tax system? You're not, so you just pay it. And hope you don't get in trouble. Right? That's how we do things. But they have all the toys to see things that we need to see to make a better informed decision about other things, or to come to conclusion. We always have to use their instrumentation, do we not? So we're like stuck in the middle, but we're coming to the time where we can observe it with the eye. The radiation will increase. We can then measure it. Everything will be measurable, but at that time the stresses will increase. They will cover it by war. You need to know this. War is going to go hand in hand with the disruption in the heavens. That's when the war comes. That's the last straw to hide it. Then after it takes its toll, and after they take over everything, well then, the fallen will be reintroduced to set themselves up as what? Gods again. That man, that thing from the bottomless pit will come out of the pit. When he comes out of the pit, he may take the form of whatever he desires. And he'll have agents in the kingdom that do the same thing. It's nothing more than the story of the fallen angels again. Of course, people are going to think they're from the planet Diaper or Sirius constellation or something else. And then they're going to ultimately convince people, you have come from us. And then people will get locked into they'll be fascinated with their That's why it's not safe to ever be fascinated with these strange things you see. If you can be fascinated that easily and be locked into it, or get a good feeling by encounters you have had, like it is just bliss, Now you know what people are going to be facing in the times to come. Some of you have been so taken by what you saw that you really cried to see it again. And if that happened to you, the believer, how can anybody else escape that? How can they escape that? You're the believer, but you wanted to see it again. So much, so you chased it. You looked into it. You wondered. You said, is the Bible wrong? Is that really right? You guys see what I'm saying? We're about to go through a demonstration period. And the way things are going now, people are ready to believe anything they want to. I know that by all the false religions that are rising. The people turning away from the gospel of Jesus Christ. They're going back to fairy tales and Jewish fables is what they're doing. It's what they're doing. Their faith has been shaken by the facts that are being brought forward, but whose facts? And are they facts? Some of these archaeological digs are healthy. Some are not. Some are old stories, deep embedded stories about the fallen angels. But they're not read that way. Because in that lie, again, even those who are the Anunnaki, right, were said to be the creators of man. Anu, Enlil, Enki, Nehursag, all these folks, right? Bela Alil, Eridu, Bactabira, Larsa, Sipper, Sharupa, all these places spoken about in those texts. But people can't see what they're actually talking about. Misnaming things. Stories jumbled up. Right? And you got to be careful. You have to be spiritually grounded to see that. But once you do, you can go in there and see it. That's good. Reawakening Anakim. That's right. It's in the Bible too. Because Goliath was kin to the Anakim, which came from the word Anunnaki, which came from a much older word that did not come from this place here, but from a place that was destroyed, because the first estate of Lucifer was destroyed. My goodness. We're going to go through these things. We will. It actually supports, the truth supports our Father's word. You could say in modern terms that instead of using estate, use homeworld. Use homeworld. Like the fallen angels left their estate and came here. They had another place. They were observers. That story is also written down as the Agigi, who got tired of where they were, and they said, hey, we need wives. So they went and took them. They didn't ask. They took them. Because they had a right. Nobody could stop them. They recorded these stories. Then you read in the Vedas. Right? Going through stories. Learning about things. They're all the same story. It's the story of the fallen. Babylon, one of the biggest kingdoms on the face of the earth, had another name. A name that you know about. But because they're two different names, you can't put them together. We'll go over that Saturday. You'll be shocked. But that same Babylonian kingdom is here again. The only components missing are the daily demonstrations they had. Because we have flight again. We have destructive weapons again. Our leadership is right again. But the only thing we're missing is one type of demonstration of which they yielded to. And that's why climate chaos, that word was used. Climate chaos marks both people and the dislodging of a celestial object that will wreak havoc upon the face of the earth, and then they will have to go in the earth to hide themselves. All these things go together. But again, I tell you, To know a truth is a burden because you normally keep it to yourselves. How can you tell people these things? And you can't tell everybody everything. Two seeds planted too close together, neither seed will grow. Prophecy has always been clear, but our understanding has been skewed. We've been lied to. We are the 10 virgins, 5 wise, 5 foolish, and we've been awakened. That's why we're hunting. That's why we won't stop. Half of us are wise, half are foolish. But we have been awakened. We don't buy what they gave us. We will see a truth. How you see it will be either in a delusional state, or you'll see it in truth and enter into the door that the others could not enter into. You will decide that. You will decide. To not have oil is to discount your deliverance from this world by Christ. Do you not know that that oil that you have gained, you gained over the years? It was purchased with a price. The price was all of what you went through. That's the price you paid for the oil. In order for somebody to have that oil, they have to live your life. That's why it would say go buy your own. You go back there and purchase your own oil. You can't have mine. I went through what I went through just for me, not for you. Can you see that truth about the oil? Your life was also bought with a price. Can anyone purchase your life? No, can't. We'll be going over more and more of this, folks. These are subjects I really never really did. Listen, I hesitate to get into these things because I know they're going to say that nut job. The worst part is some of you are going to say it, oh, can't listen to that guy anymore. He went off the cuckoo's nest. But then when you see it, here's what will happen. When you begin to see these things, you'll see the truth right in front of your face. But if it scares you bad enough, guess what you'll do? You'll bow to it. Here's human nature. If a giant approached you and caused you great fear, but that giant knelt down and tapped you on the shoulder and said, you are my friend, you would be so relieved of your fear that you would hug that giant. That's what happens to humanity. This is why they kneel to false gods. They scare you so bad in the beginning, and when they befriend you, you think you have found an undefeatable friend. And people will begin to worship them. It's going to spell trouble. Folks, I want to say, listen, I want to say, God bless each of you. I do like, hey, COT is moving its server. We're just too tiny at the, we are, can you believe that? We're too tiny. I can't tell you, I don't even know how that's happening, but we're too tiny. We're too tiny, so we got to swap some things out. Be patient with us because it's going to look totally different as we swap. We got to scrap and swap. We really do. We have to change everything because it's just too many. And it hasn't stopped. The whole site went down a few times. You guys didn't notice because of the snapshot backup pages, but it's too much, right? So we have to go forward with, and some of the sections from the other 5 sites have been added to our main site, right? And so they're like, we're just being bombarded, and it's not actual hacking or denial of service. It's just something is happening. I'll put it that way. So we have to move from one architecture to another. We do. We really do. So, that just has to be done. And certainly, I'm in these the very subjects that I hesitated to talk about, right? I'm careful in doing so, but when people start seeing it, I'm telling you now, we're going to talk more about it, right? Because it's going to be right in front of your faces. And you live in that season where you're going to see many things you're going to see. many things. And it's not going to matter. It won't matter, because everybody's going to go to the crazy folks. They're going to say, well, you people who called yourself sober, you didn't know a thing. You didn't even tell us about this. What is that? You see? Dennis says, the second wave isn't that bad, is it, Mike? Oh, Dennis. Listen, this is January. 0.3. It's just a 0.3. The rating of that wave and what will happen throughout the months, it'll go all the way to 20. We're at a 0.3. We're at a 0.3, right? And the sun is changing. The particles coming off the sun, right, are about 4%. It's a 4% increase in how they measure it as affecting your skin. If you go out in sunlight right now in January, you're going to feel the pricklies on your skin. That's never happened before in January. Not this much prickly stuff, right? In the summertime, there will be a time that you'll have to avoid the sun altogether. And if you don't cover yourself, it's going to burn your skin within about 10 seconds. Cancer rates are going to be so high, and the radiation is building up in the magnetosphere. My goodness. So then, folks who watch the magnetosphere, here's what you won't see. You'll begin to see an increase in radiation of many different particles, which will cause the flux levels. They just go out. They'll just fluctuate so bad, right? The proton count, you'll see disruptions, not necessarily large raises, but you're going to see gaps in data because you're going to have to pull it out. Those sensors are designed, and it does go through a filter, that if it hits a certain point, it will be pulled and refilled, right? That's what will happen. So whenever you don't want someone to see certain wavelengths of things or certain trend lines, you pull the data and you flatline it. In other words, you fill it in with a probability of what it would normally be based upon what you have, but you do pull out the actual data. They've learned how to do this live with Soho. So it's almost impossible to get a live feed from anything now, right? Remember they began to do this with the International Space Station? And now there's a huge delay in what is live and what you see, right? Huge delay. Well, that delay is for algorithms they have to pull out things, right? So listen, folks, we're gonna continue in this topic, okay? We're gonna do that. I don't want to do it, but I'm going to do it according to the Word of God. We will be talking about some of the ancient things in truth. It's not interesting. It's sobering. But what you're really discussing is how the beast system came to be in the first place. And what this delusion actually it is. What it actually is. Once you begin to see it, you're not going to fall for it. And I'll tell you again, if you succumb to worry, that's like succumbing to a delusion. And if you can remember that, you'll say, wait a minute, because it's hard to break this cycle of worry. Well, the same thing happens in a delusion. Because worry is nothing more than your imagination dictating an end that never comes. Correct? Now you have something to compare it to. Remember the exercise of trust, or the little layout I gave you of trust with the two children and the adult and the circles and the guns and the 2-inch wide but very long ballistic gel barrier. With trust, you will stand. Without trust, you are certain to fall. Okay? God bless each of you. We'll get deeper into this tomorrow. Tomorrow's Mikey Wednesday. Lord willing, I'll be here tomorrow. I want to say God bless everybody. I don't know if Larry is having news or not, but if he is, the system is queued up just in case. If not, we're going to have to be, Larry and I are going to have to do some things too. And Larry and his news team. There are some directions that would be advisable. So, Larry, with that, I'm going to say God bless you, brother. I'll be in contact with you soon. I hope you catch up with Mikey too. And when you find him, then we can all chat together getting my Skype reloaded and everything so we can all just chat together on a few projects there. All right. Everybody else, I'll see you Wednesday. Thank you for joining us tonight. Thank you, BP, for your input. God bless you. All you ministers out there that are listening, God bless you too. Pastor Scott, always, God bless you. God bless you. In a G chair, they pass out. Their faces all squashed back. They look horrible. How do you overcome that? Well, now, somebody says fallen angel tech. Well, let me give you this. Now, I know this is going to, some of you out there, you're experts in your field. This may fly in the face of some things that you know, right? By the way, I'm a controversial speaker, right? I don't speak for popularity. I don't speak for my edification either. I want you to consider something. Does anybody know the relationship? There's a known well, we're just going to talk about mass, right? That's number one. We're going to talk about gravity, right? And we're going to talk about electromagnetism. I'm going to give you a crash course and some of the properties just so you know how it works. Okay. First, electromagnetism, right? Magnetic fields can be generated through the flow of current and some other things. But when you produce a magnetic field, it is polarized, which means one side is basically positive, one side negative, right? If you have two magnets, they can repel or attract to one another. Electrons travel on. Do you guys know that? Just like our universe. Everything moves and is following the magnetic force lines of our galaxy. They can see them now because now they have optics that can see the magnetic fields. It's quite beautiful. It's not what you expect, but it's quite beautiful. So everything is following that stuff, right? But why? Now we're talking about defeating inertia, which is actually to defeat gravity. Right? So that's electromagnetism. I'm not going deeper than that. That's Now let's talk about gravity. What in the world is gravity? Gravity and electromagnetism are quite different. The magnetic field, right? Very different than gravity. So what is gravity? Gravity has to do with mass. And it works like this. You have one atom, right? You have one atom. Not a lot of gravity, right? One atom, not a lot of gravity. Get about 5 or 6, 7, 8, factor that times a billion. You got a massive object, right? You have mass. Well, in the mass or in a heavy object, what has happened? You have a bunch of atoms clunked together. Why did they stick together? They attract one another. Stay with me. They attract one another. But it's also cumulative. Right? So the more atoms you add, right? Correct? Now, in a way, all things like if we look at an atom is balanced. You know why? The protons inside are negated by the electrons on the outside. Anybody ever do chemical balancing and all those things, right? So you have to make sure certain things match and add up and formulas are run, this, that, and the other, right? So anyway, that electromagnetism within an atom is negated by its protons and by its electrons, right? But it still has an electromagnetic field around it. There's current flowing through every single atom. It's being generated. Self-sustaining, actually. All right? We're looking for perpetual energy, and all we had to do was look at an atom anyway. That's a key to the LHC, by the way, one of the keys. It's got many purposes. That's one of the keys. While everybody's looking for these everlasting energy sources, one has already been committed that you can hold in your hand. But we're not getting to that yet. So then, electromagnetism or magnets or magnetic field can repel or attract other magnetic fields, but it can also do something else. Anybody know what it is? If any proton or if any electron, depending on what portion of the magnetic field it is, the magnetic field can act as a highway that protons or electric. Come on, tell me, somebody out there just say, oh yeah, that's it. I can't be alone in these things. Right? That's your job. All right? Once we overcome these things, we're no longer prone to parts of the delusion. Let me ask you guys a question. Some of you folks have seen UFOs, right? You've heard about them. Listen, here it goes. You ready? Because I'm going to connect this all the way back to Mars. Not in the way you think either. Anyway, how would a craft make a 90-degree turn and the occupant still live? That's impossible. Do you guys know what kind of forces that would be on there? Moving at 3,000 miles an hour, make a 90-degree turn, and nobody is smashed to one side. That's a lot of force that just changed directions. And we all know that inertia works. Right? You know that law of inertia? Anything in motion tends to stay in motion in that given direction upon that side, right? Do you think mankind has overcome that? How many of you think that mankind has overcome the problem of inertia? Because if they overcame that, you still have to overcome the G's. You know, when a person's face is smashed back, when they're being tested for health reason, right? You're going to have to make a daily declaration, an hourly declaration, and say, I'm going to continue to stand. And if it takes you, it takes you. That's what you have to do. You're made to do that. You're made to stand in the face of things that will scare every creature on this earth. You're made to stand in places a demon won't stand. And the angels, they won't stand either. But you have to commit yourself to it. See, for a man, it's more of making a choice. Father, it's your way or my death. That's how it is. That's your choice. Once you make that choice, your strength returns. Your strength is in your ability not to respond by the flesh, but to stand firm in the spirit. That takes all your strength. You don't have to exercise strength to fight back with flesh. I call that the coward's way out. To fight with your flesh is the coward's way out. Because it's much harder not to be overcome with anger, isn't it? Come on, men, you know what I'm talking about. It is much harder not to be overcome with anger. It is much harder not to say a word.